Welcome back to Like Dreamer. Well, that didn't take long. I have today a replay to share of Maniac mode, which is basically the normal mode for this game. So it's Maniac Trial All Plus. So let's take a look. And for this run, I didn't really... I mean, I literally uploaded my other run yesterday, and I just completed this run the day after. I had a good amount of time today to just do a little bit of practicing on the stage that was giving me trouble, which was stage 9. That was pretty much it. Stage 9, and then I think I played the stage 8 boss a little bit in the practice mode. And man, the practice mode is so great in this. Let's get into it. Yeah, the practice mode has really great, like, sections. It's not as much control as you have from, like, save states, but very much appreciated versus Mushihimesama and some of the other cave ports where it's just, you can start at the beginning or you can start at a mid-boss or the boss. Oh, and if there isn't, like, a mid-boss, then I guess you can't start anywhere other than the beginning or the end. So that sucks, and it's really great this game has sensible practice starting locations. I'm sure there's a whole story for why we can't have a nicer practice feature in those ports, but hey, I'm glad we have them anyway. But hey, let's talk about this game. So I decided to play with D instead because I don't need the... It gives you more damage, like everything just does more damage, so I can kill enemies quicker, and I didn't really feel that I needed the shield that you get with AAAD. So yeah, that's why I'm doing AAAD. Getting a little bit more comfortable with the hypering thing because I haven't really played a game super seriously that had hypers, so that was fun. And as far as the bosses go, well, as far as this difficulty compares to casual, it's hard for me to gauge just because I feel like all the runs I did in Mushihimesama really set me up for doing well now at other shmups. Like, I learned a lot of good fundamentals there. It's really satisfying finally going to another game and seeing how your skills transfer. That's really awesome. I could see that getting almost addicting where you just want to keep picking up new games and playing through like the lower difficulties in them to feel good about yourself, which I've been tempted by, but I know that if I want to improve my skills, which I find ultimately more satisfying, I want to be pushing myself, pushing a game to its harder difficulty levels. So yeah, maybe for somebody who's completely new to shmups, this would be really, really good, and there would be more of a difference between the casual and the Maniac mode. But for me, there definitely is, like, the pressure is definitely on more, especially in the later stages. But it wasn't like a huge difference. Like, I don't know. Like Mushihimesama, original versus like novice original, felt like that was a much bigger gap, a much bigger jump than this. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how it is in expert mode and the spoiler alert secret difficulty modes that you unlock. There's I guess Nightmare and then Chaos. And another thing that I really like about this game, because it's like actually just a PC game rather than a port of an arcade game, I need to stop comparing it. Well, I'm comparing it to what I know. That's why I keep bringing up Mushihimesama. I don't have a whole lot of references to draw from. So I like that there's actually an unlock system. I like games where you can unlock things. That's kind of fun, especially when you just, you know, like I was like, I did a bunch of training mode. I don't want to get into a run just yet, but you know, let's go try to unlock some stuff. So I played through like the boss rush mode on Maniac, and yeah, you unlock new game modes and stuff that way. I think it could be cool to unlock like cosmetics and stuff, but that's like asking too much for a not one man, but like a small indie developer. That's a lot of assets and stuff, so I'm not going to say that that's a criticism or anything. I just think it would be cool going in the vein of having things to unlock and stuff. It's kind of fun when even when you're not, you know, making progress against the major barrier you're up against. You know, you're still just practicing and stuff. It's kind of fun to have other little things to do, but it's not a big deal. What matters most is, you know, is the actual action gameplay fun. So, and it definitely is here. It's becoming very apparent to me that my weakness now are those triangles. Like Mushihimesama had the kind of line shots. They were really just like kind of bars, really thin rectangles. But these arrows shots, I guess I'm just not used to tracking them. This one's funny. I mean, it's fork bullets, which is fitting, but probably not something you're gonna find in a lot of other games. But yeah, the triangles are giving me trouble. It's weird, like as soon as they start to show up on the screen, my ability to track them compared to the other shots is so diminished. One trick that I've definitely learned in this game, because there's quite just from playing the Stage 9 training mode, and this is a useful skill in general, is because this game has some patterns where it likes to surround you and have stuff coming from opposite sides, like two overlaid patterns that are kind of at an angle from each other, so shots are kind of crossing. There's a point where they're crossing. For some reason, my habit has always been to kind of hang out where they converge, which is pretty much the hardest way to dodge that pattern, because you're having to dodge things coming from different directions simultaneously. And what I've learned is, at least when it's possible, it's easier to dodge one of the patterns and then dodge the other. So like, usually that means moving to one side. So you move kind of aggressively through one of the patterns towards the origin of that pattern, and then you dodge through the other one. So you're not having to dodge both at once. With that approach, you can dodge them separately, but it requires that little kind of scary step of dodging towards the origin of the pattern, when usually you're trying to keep your distance so you have time to react to things. But that's something that I found really useful, and this game kind of taught me just from the little I've played. It's cool how as you play different shmups and games and stuff, you pick up kind of generic patterns that you can apply. You develop a pattern language or a pattern library of things that you recognize and how to deal with them, different ways of dealing with them. And that's like a thing in several fields of, you know, industry or research or whatever, is like any sort of expertise. There's this idea called a pattern language, which is basically just there's a whole book on it. I think it's just called pattern language. It influenced a lot of like software development ideas, but it's just the idea of kind of amassing a library of patterns that you can apply to simplify challenging or complex things by drawing on the previous experience. Noticing patterns that exist within the domain that you are working in. That might just be a overly overly analytical way of just saying, recognizing new patterns and stuff like that, but it can be useful to like try to identify patterns and then actually write them down, and you develop like a little database of I could see a few things like that potentially in this genre of game, but so let's see. Yeah, I took a hit. Not well. I hypered it. So that's one cool thing in this mode that makes it easier, and I don't know how it changes in the other modes. Maybe it's still the case, but when you get hit, there's actually a small window where you're allowed to bomb, so you can save yourself after you get hit, which is awesome, because how many times have you been playing a shooting game and you got hit and you swear that you pressed the bomb button before you got hit, or, you know, like a few frames after. I think that's really cool and nice, and has definitely saved me quite a few times in this run, as you just saw. And a lot of the patterns in this game I found it's just a matter of weaving left and right to handle them, which I guess is a fairly standard way of handling patterns in many games, but it's different. I'm just observing that because there were some cases in like the Mushihimesama runs where there was a very specific route that I had that I was following like to the letter, and so far in this game, no. Not as much, except for a few of the bosses, but at a high level the movement still is, you know, going left and right. I noticed that I'd been collecting the mental level ups when I don't need them, so I was seeing if I could just leave it there in case I need to collect it later. I find that to be very distracting, so I should practice that more. I'm not sure if it really gives a benefit picking it up when you don't need it. Yeah, I felt the pressure started to get a little bit high on these on this stage specifically. Just a lot more enemies and shots on the screen at once. I started to, in a couple places I started to feel like I was getting behind. I was always managing to find a gap to get through that didn't seem too risky. And I like the way that the shots in this game animate. It also just helps to make it a lot more clear, like what their dimensions are. Because the purple kind of pulsating effect in Mushihimesama, I found that made it extra hard to like keep track of their bound, like exactly where each shot was. So I guess there's a hidden extend with this boss that I managed to get. If you kill her within, I think it's like 14 seconds or something, you get an extend or something like that. I guess so. Not exactly sure. I think there's also a hidden extend maybe in stage 7 and possibly 8, although I'm not exactly sure how the stage 8 one works yet. I've read about it, but I don't know that I've actually executed it. And you of course have the score-based extends as always. Yeah, so, I mean, as little as I'm having to say about this, because it's not like a Mushihimesama run where I have, like, this route that I want to share. I'm just kind of playing it, you know, YOLO style. That's not a word I say. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to hear that. But it was a fitting word for how I was approaching this. Yeah, if somebody could make a procedurally generated shmup that procedurally generates levels that are well-designed shmup levels but different every time, that could be pretty fun. I'm sure somebody has tried. I've definitely played games that call themselves bullet hells that have procedural generation. Whether they actually are this type of game that I'm talking about is another question. That way, you'd have to be reacting to what's happening rather than figuring out a route. That could be cool, especially as a way to develop your shmup skills, because then it's purely developing your like reaction skills, rather than you start to learn a route and then now it's about following the route. And less about those fundamentals that you always want to be trying to get better at. Another reason why it's good to switch up games, too. So this is an example where I had planned to do this, and I managed to have to use a bomb there, or a hyper there. But I intended to sweep to the right when that pattern appeared around me, but I forgot that she had this pattern. This is literally like the third or fourth time I've seen this boss, and I didn't really practice this one, so. But if I had dodged to the right, then I could dodge through that pattern before it starts moving, and then just dodge the one on the left when it comes towards me, so. Much easier. This is a cool little pattern. Alright, stage 8. More pressure here as well. There is definitely a gradual increase in difficulty as you get through here. I didn't feel like there were like difficulty spike stages or bosses. Felt like it was a pretty smooth progression, which is cool. I wouldn't even say that it's necessarily a bad thing to have, like, difficulty spikes. Oh yeah, oof. I was getting a little bit close for comfort there. You know, it's just like, what feel do you want? I guess as somebody who's designing the game. It's not necessarily bad for a game like this where you're playing through it, you know, making runs multiple times. Like, it's kind of, there's something to be said for like Mushihimesama when, you know, there's a really hard boss in one of the stages, the earlier stages, or a hard section. That's just kind of like the start of stage 3 I always have had trouble with, so it adds this kind of ebb and flow to the intensity, but having it just kind of increase constantly at a gradual pace all the way up to the end is cool too. So, I guess that's the hidden extend for this stage. Not exactly hidden, because I wasn't really going for it. I think you just have to shoot the ship that is your character. Not sure how I got that. I love how the backgrounds are animated in this, but they're not, for me, not nauseating. Or, yeah, this pattern I did have a plan for. The trick with the flames was just arcing up through the curve when they first appear. This pattern, not so much, as you saw, I bombed there. Yeah, and it's my arch nemesis. Needles, and overlapping needles. So, probably will be one I have to practice more in Expert. I don't have any idea how hard Expert is yet, so I'm excited to take that on. But yeah, the stages, some games, like especially older games and like arcade games, when they're kind of going for spectacle and stuff, the backgrounds could be disturbing almost, or nauseating, if you're sensitive to that. But this game, despite like that animation of you kind of zooming, what is it, going down a tunnel or something like that, I didn't feel it was, like, the colors in the back are muted and faded enough where they don't really make it hard to see what's going on. Whereas some of those arcade shmups, the backgrounds are really detailed, and I don't know, sometimes that kind of hurts the legibility of what's going on. And that's just part of getting good at a game, of course. It's not necessarily a bad thing that it takes some skill to visually process what's going on. It's a thing with many games. So I like these big enemies where you destroy them and they clear all the shots. That's satisfying and a relief, especially as the screen starts filling up. Just trying to do that U-shaped motion so I can make gaps for myself to go back through. And I guess from what I've seen so far, you don't take damage from touching enemies. At least nothing that I've tried. There might be some exceptions. Yeah, this is a case where I was starting to feel like the speed of this character was kind of a liability, because I felt like I couldn't do small enough movements to micrododge those lines, but yeah, ended up having to use a hyper. These guys, I wonder if these guys can actually hurt you if they touch you. They're pretty threatening, actually. The witch, all the witch enemies too. Especially the one on the last few on the stage 9, which you'll see coming up soon. Guys, I think not a great performance here on this boss. I should also mention I'm trying a new recording method this time. Yeah, so we got the overlapping patterns here. Just interrupting myself. And then just, as with many of the patterns, staying on one side and dodging to the other. Because a lot of the patterns are like, there's something going on that you have to weave through, and then there's shots being aimed at you. So it's just going left and right at a good rate. Same with this one too, really. And it's the skill of how can you get so good at dodging the fixed pattern so that you don't really have to think about how to maneuver through it. I was really frustrated to get hit there. I was gonna practice this boss a little bit more. because I didn't feel like I had a good handle on how to handle that specific pattern. I felt like there should be a pretty simple way to get through it, but I just hadn't figured it out yet. Yeah, it's really about like developing your competency with moving it through the fixed pattern so that you can avoid the shots being aimed at you while moving through it. I think that's a good way to break down some of these phases. This one's I knew that if I dodged too far that I'm just gonna get trapped with this one, so I'm looking for an opportunity to cut back or just try to move really slowly. These weaving spheres reminds me of the stage 3 boss in Mushihimesama. So yeah, I got hit. Not ideal. I should have seen that hit coming. I should have bombed it, but I managed to get bomb all the other hits in time, so I'm glad about that. Have a really good supply of resources coming into this. And now we get to see all the different enemy types again. And all the Maniac versions of the boss patterns. And this I did practice. The practice sections were great because they were pretty much right before each boss. Yeah, not a great start to it. This is the pattern that I was still having trouble on in practice mode. I got it, but I didn't. I guess I had forgotten what pattern was coming first. So that was the issue there. It caught me by surprise, even though I did know what I was supposed to do. It's really great having a character that just does as much damage as possible so I can clear these big enemies nice and quick and not have to get overwhelmed. Just requires a lot of movement, so I'm definitely working the controls like more, I think, with a fast character than I would with a slower character. Just more inputs in general, but it's good. I like trying a fast character for once, as opposed to kind of I spent a lot of time on the medium to slower characters in Mushihimesama, and it's good, I think, to develop competence in moving around with a really fast character, because it's kind of scary. You're afraid you're gonna move more than you want. So when you have a really good sense of how far you're going to move when you press a movement button with a fast character when you're not focused, I think it's really powerful because fast movement gives you so much more options for evading shots. It's just the trade-off is that lack of precision. And having to get comfortable with that. I found for kind of a compromise or the best of both worlds. This is my pattern that I practice for this boss, by the way. Starting on the left side, dodging to right, and then going back to the left, and then back to the center. I found that makes it really easy to dodge the shots that are coming from kind of behind you, because it gives you maximum distance away from them, as opposed to hanging out in the center. A lot of the bosses, seem to never really want to hang out in the center. This one was funny when I first encountered it because I'm like, oh, these flying things, I know these guys. And so I dodged one, and then it turns around and then starts going for me again. I'm like, what the heck? So those guys stick around for quite a bit longer. This is a cool one. This is a cool one. Really flow-inducing pattern. I like this pattern for that, and that's also sucks. That's as I said, the needles. That's a tough one. My strategy of dodging towards one side didn't exactly work. These green ones also give me a little bit of trouble, but I found the trick is to identify which of the columns has the most space and dodge through that one rather than picking a smaller one. Same pattern here, I kind of sweep up through the flames and back to the center. And then my thinking was it's kind of easier when I start on the left and work my way to the right rather than starting in the center, but yeah, I haven't figured out a great way to deal with that one. Alright, so Maniac, true last boss. I found you can just point blank this really easily. And now just gotta weave through this one. Well, you don't even need to... That's the trick for the aim shots, is as long as you're moving, and then here you also just want to go back up and point blank. As long as you're moving, you know you won't be hit by the aim shot. So in that one, it's a matter of focusing on the kind of background, the non-aimed shot, and getting through that, and just making sure you're still moving left to right as you do that. So my focus is more on avoiding the wide shot as opposed to the aimed one. I just know I just need to be moving left and right at a set interval, and sometimes the audio cue helps with that. Alright. Now we have this guy, this pattern. This one I haven't really figured out the trick to making it easier. I think I'm not in the best place in the screen to avoid it, but at least I only got hit once. This I found hanging out on the left side helps give you space. This one you just gotta practice. I don't know what to say, and I clearly didn't practice enough. This one's cool. Yeah, you go around in a circle, and that makes it easiest. Gives you enough time to react to each wall that's coming at you, and then that last one is just hard mode. I'm not sure there's a super easy way to get through that. And sometimes she's already dead, so you don't need to do these crazy micro dodges, but I ended up having to do that. Now we have the toughest pattern, and also the most fun one. So she has, one thing that I noticed is she has a bomb shield, but she doesn't have a hyper shield. So if you want to use your bombs, go use your bombs and then go point blank her, because that'll build up your hyper meter fast, even though it won't be damaging her. But I ended up not having to do that. But I was ready. If I was going to bomb, I was going to go get up right up close to her and try to build up my meter again. And replay has ended. So that was fun. I don't have much to say about that because it was only like a day between runs, but I hope that was fun. A little bit more challenging for sure, but the fact that I got it, this was my second attempt at it, and I had a little bit of practice between my first attempt, so just on stage 9. But yeah, we'll see how expert mode is. I'm excited to see if it's going to be like a huge jump in difficulty. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.